Turkey's role in Africa, a new ally amidst historical exploitation. In the ever-evolving geopolitical landscape, Turkey has positioned itself as a staunch ally of Africa, presenting a stark contrast to the historical roles of the US, the UK, the EU, and other nations traditionally implicated in the exploitation of the continent. This shift is not just rhetoric but part of a broader strategy as Africa awakens to its potential, shaking off the remnants of colonialism and corrupt puppet leaders who have long served the interests of former colonizers for minimal gains. Historical exploitation and modern realignments. Africa's history is marred by centuries of exploitation. European powers, primarily through colonization, siphoned trillions of dollars worth of resources, leaving the continent impoverished and underdeveloped. The legacy of this exploitation is evident in the infrastructure gaps and economic struggles that many African nations face today. If these resources had been used for the continent's development, Africa could potentially surpass the economic achievements of Europe and the Americas. In recent years, a significant shift has occurred. African nations are increasingly rejecting corrupt leaders installed or supported by Western powers. These leaders, often seen as mere puppets, facilitated the extraction of resources at the expense of their own people. The current awakening has caused panic in the EU and the US, which fear losing their influence and economic interest in the region. Turkey's strategic partnership. Unlike traditional colonizers, Turkey has crafted a narrative of liberation. It presents itself as a partner in Africa's growth, opposing the entities that have historically drained the continent's wealth. Turkey's engagement in Africa is multifaceted, involving economic investment, military cooperation, and cultural exchange. This approach has endeared Turkey to many African nations. Morocco, however, remains under the shadow of French influence. King Mohammed VI, like his father Hassan II, is perceived as a puppet of France. Hassan II's reign was marked by his alignment with French interests, often at the expense of Moroccan sovereignty. This dynamic has not gone unnoticed, and it stands in contrast to nations like Libya, which resisted French domination even amidst civil turmoil. Genuine versus orchestrated revolutions. The wave of revolutions across Africa has been a mix of genuine grassroots movements and orchestrated coups. Burkina Faso stands out as a beacon of genuine revolution, where the populace has successfully ousted corrupt leaders without external manipulation. In contrast, countries like Gabon have experienced what many believe to be fake revolutions, engineered by Western intelligence agencies such as the CIA and France's DGSE. These agencies have a long history of meddling in African affairs, often supporting leaders who align with their geopolitical interests. Turkey's military independence. Turkey's rise as a military power is notable, particularly given the sanctions imposed by the EU, the UK, and the US. These sanctions were intended to curb Turkey's influence, but they have instead spurred the country to develop its own defense industry. Turkey now produces a significant portion of its military equipment, reducing its dependence on Western arms. This self-reliance has bolstered Turkey's standing as a formidable military power, capable of supporting its allies in Africa without Western approval. Behind these sanctions, British strategies and historical crimes continue to influence the geopolitical chessboard. However, Turkey remains vigilant, leveraging its understanding of British tactics to navigate the complex international arena. Erdogan's popularity in Africa. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's approach has resonated deeply in Africa. Unlike Western powers, Erdogan is seen as a leader who gives rather than takes. Turkey's investments in infrastructure, education, and healthcare in various African countries are seen as genuine efforts to uplift the continent rather than exploit its resources. The hidden hand of Western powers. The terrorism that plagues parts of Africa is often traced back to Western interventions. Militant groups, initially financed and armed by Western powers, create chaos that these same powers then offer to resolve, justifying their continued presence and control in the region. This strategy has been employed repeatedly, ensuring a cycle of dependency and intervention. ECOWAS, an adversary or ally. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, is viewed by some as an adversary to Africa's true independence. Critics argue that ECOWAS often acts in the interests of Western powers rather than those of the African people. This perception undermines its legitimacy and highlights the complex interplay of regional and international politics. Conclusion. As Africa continues to rise, shedding the shackles of historical exploitation and corrupt leadership, new alliances are forming. Turkey's role as an ally contrasts sharply with the historical and ongoing interventions of Western powers. By focusing on genuine partnership and mutual growth, Turkey has positioned itself as a pivotal player in Africa's journey towards self-determination and prosperity.